Well, welcome back, everybody. I know it has been a while, but yeah, life gets in the way, and there's not much I can do about it. So, y- just to kind of put your mind at ease, everything's going fine in my world. Family's fine, grandson is fine, everything's fine, wife is fine. It's just, yeah, it's been quite a wild ride for about the last year. My mom died, obviously, as everybody knows, last year in June on my birthday, and this past Christmas, my wife's mom passed away the day after Christmas, and so it's been a lot of work. We still have her dad around, and so we're working on a lot of that. And again, like I said, life gets in the way. That's not what the reason for this video is, but just a little explanation as to why I haven't been where I needed to be. And but today I've got something I need to talk about. There's some things that have happened in the world of Lincoln Sense that I need to discuss. And tonight, the night before Mother's Day, seems pretty fitting. So we're gonna chat about this stuff. Stick around. So for this video to make sense to anybody, unless you've been living under a rock for the last year and a half, uh, you obviously are all aware that the United States Mint no longer makes the Lincoln cent. And I've made a couple of videos about the ending of the Lincoln cent and the thought process behind it, and the fact that it makes monetary sense to eliminate a coin from our daily lives that really has no practical value in it other than rounding or not having to round up or down in order to make change. Okay, so look, I get that, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. From a collector standpoint, however, this has kind of thrown a wrench into everybody, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. Why has it thrown a wrench into everybody's world, and what do we need to expect from the market going forward? Now, I've deliberately held off on making this video because I really wanted to see what was going to happen to the market as we moved forward almost a year or close to it anyway. And, to stop and I guess think about, what the Lincoln cent means to collectors and what it's going to do to the collecting world. So we're going to, we're going to sit and chat about prices and what's happening in the market, what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from people. That's kind of what's really important here is what it is that I'm hearing from people in and around the market. I've had numerous people contact me and say, hey, why is this doing this, why is this doing that, why am I going to a coin show and finding this or not finding this, and what's happening. So we're gonna dive into it. We're gonna start with everybody's favorite publication when it comes to coins, Graysheet. And look, I'm gonna, knowing me, obviously I collect rolls, so we're gonna start there. We're going to kind of dissect what's happening with Graysheet and rolls to begin with. So, in an effort to kind of make this video understandable for everybody, seasoned collectors, non seasoned collectors, stuff like that, we're going to talk a little bit about Graysheet. Graysheet's a publication that anybody can access as long as you pay the fee for it. Or if you're a dealer, you sign up for a subscription and you get it every month. And what this is it's a publication that comes in pretty much kind of like I guess if you want to call it magazine format. And inside are all sorts of prices for gold coins, prices for silver coins, prices for rolls, uncirculated rolls, prices for circulated rolls, prices for proof sets. You get the idea. Anyway, because this publication is so heavily relied upon for the values of things, it's followed by dealers and non-dealers alike. And what we're going to focus on, because I collect rolls of coins, I'm going to focus on the rolls of coins, but we're going to talk about singles a little bit later on in the video. So, hang around for that. We'll start with rolls here. And the reason why this is important is I get my gray sheet publication once a year. And I usually get it around June, May, something like that. And I don't need one every single month because really, for the most part, the price of rolls doesn't change and it doesn't fluctuate. The price of single raw coins in this publication doesn't really fluctuate either. Neither does anything else for the most part. But what's interesting about the fact that it doesn't fluctuate is usually over the course of time, you see prices increase. And what's really, really interesting about the pictures I'm about to throw up on the screen here are you're going to see like 2025s and 2026s up in the corners of the screen and little screenshots of some of the rolls and the roll prices. And we're gonna cover those. And we're going to try and scratch our heads and figure out what the heck's going on because there's a lot of things here that just don't make sense. And then we're going to talk about singles. So let's start with rolls. We're going to start at the very, I guess, top, if you want to call it that, of the BU roll list, which is right here, 1934 Philadelphia Mint rolls. You can see that on either side of me here, 2025, 2026, and you can see that prices are different. And obviously, like the 34D roll, for example, the price has gone from, that to that. And if you look at the rest of the prices on it, you go, okay, well, that makes sense. That roll is getting harder and harder to come by. I'm not quite sure I understand why it jumped from that to that in the time frame of less than a year or just over a year. I think this 2025 one here was, I think, February or March, something like that, of 2025. So I'm not understanding why it jumped that much. But look, there are some other ones that just aren't making sense to me when it comes to these prices. We're gonna talk about those. Okay, here's a classic example of what I mean by some things just don't add up. Let's take a look at this. Okay, 2025, 2026. I'm not getting it. I don't understand. As a dealer, I would be totally frustrated if this was happening because you're looking at half the price for these. Now, as a buyer, I'm going to a coin show and all of a sudden Gray Sheet shows up and it says this. Heck, I'm prepared to pay this and I get to buy it for this. I'm happy if that's the case. But that's not the way it's currently working in the market. And I'm from a roll perspective, and the same thing is probably unfolding in other areas too, not just in rolls, but I'm picking on rolls because I know rolls. But the part that bothers me about this is, you're going from 375 to $200, 425 to $200. Right, that's a huge difference there, and that doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't calculate, and as a buyer, it shouldn't calculate for you either, because what I'm seeing on the selling platforms, both Facebook selling groups as well as eBay and other places, is look, rolls are going up. It's that simple. The Gray Sheet publication is not right in its right mind, and either it's the rolls aren't available, and if they aren't available, the scarcity should drive the price up, right? Scarcity, supply and demand should drive it up. But you can't tell me that you go from $425 for a 38D to $200 for a 38D roll, uh, and that the value is, the scarcity is definitely less. There's more 38D rolls now in 2026 than there were in 2025. I call, what I call. We'll leave it at that. I'm not going to say the word because I'll get in trouble. Anyway, what I'm saying is, look, um, something's not right here. Let's take a look at another one and see exactly what it is that is causing problems, because there's a couple more that are just too shocking to ignore. Yeah, if you hear my bird in the background, he's talking up a storm over here, and I'm sure you guys can probably hear him, and a little bit here and there. If I'm quiet, he might actually say something. Peekaboo, step up, ow, all sorts of things he's got. He's got all sorts of words. He's a smart bird, very smart bird. Anyway, here's another example right here. Take a look at this. I mean, you get the 1941 Philadelphia going from 2025 of $100 to $150 in 2026. Okay, that's understandable. Look, it's going up. They're getting harder to find, right? Here's what doesn't make sense. Take a look at the 41S, 42S, and 43S. Now, all three of these. Now, the 41S, it really didn't go down much, $240 to $225. Okay, I get that. So that wasn't much. But look, 41Ss are getting hard to find, especially in nice rolls. 42S. Now, here's a roll that at one point in time, Gray Sheet had this roll at $600. And this is a roll that is impossible to find in any type of decent quality. So, period, any type of decent quality. I have very few of them myself, and I'm a roll collector. In my whole lifespan of collecting rolls, I have probably only run across a dozen 42S rolls at the most. That's not a lot of 42S rolls. And yet here, you got it going from $425 to $400. What are they more prevalent now? Can I find more? If they are, I want them. Definitely, I'll buy every 42S roll I can at $400. But the truth says that when you go onto eBay, that a decent 42S roll will set you back anywhere between $600 and $800 for a decent 42S roll. And that's what I would pay. If I were bidding on a 42S roll, I'd probably put my max bid at $875 and snap it up, because they're just not out there. Now, the 43S, this is a one-year typeset. Everybody knows that 1943 was a steel cent. And you take a look at this. You get $260 over here to $200. No, I don't know anybody that can buy a nice, decent 43S for $200. I can't touch one. You can't touch one. And if you can, sell them to me for $300 and make 50% just like that. Because look, the last 43S, decent 43S roll that I purchased, I paid $525 for. $525. That's a long way from $200. And you can't find them. And so do I have a bunch of them? I have a ton of them. I have all sorts of, I probably have 25 43S rolls. But this does not make sense. This doesn't compute. Let's take a look at one more before we get too much further. Then we're going to talk singles. I'm trying to squeeze myself in here so I don't just look like a talking head, but I lied. We're going to talk about four, and we're going to talk about them real quick. Let's take a look at this up here first. These are, the last of the wheat cents that I'm going to talk about. These are, the final 3 years of the wheat cent, 56, 57, and 58. I mean, and to take a look at 56D, $9, $18. The rest of them all go from $9 to $13. Okay, they're getting harder to find, but there's still a ton of them out there. Are they some of the least expensive rolls that are out there at the moment? Yeah, they are. But believe it or not, if you look at the Gray Sheet in the month of May, you'll notice that a 1944D roll of Lincoln Cents is like some ungodly, stupid price. Let me look it up while I'm here. Yeah. It's like $14 for a 44. No, that's a 44. A 44D is $16. Okay. That's my point. Look, I mean, that's a whole decade earlier than these or more. And no, okay, something's just not adding up, not mathing, if you want to call it. So take a look at these two right down here. Special mint sets. I am not kidding you that this was the price for a roll of 1965 special mint sets last year, right? $200 this year. That's what I expect to see when things become scarce, things become harder to find. But oh my, this is right. This is right. But the ones that I talked about in the past, not so much. So, okay, what's my general wrap up to all this? Simple. My general wrap up is don't pay attention to gray sheet. It's that simple. The market is demanding more money for things, especially Lincoln Cents right now, for a lot of reasons. That's what we're going to talk about right at the end here for about singles, both circulated and uncirculated. Okay, I moved myself over on the screen so that I can fit up these images here, and this is what I mean by the singles market. Okay, and the singles market, there's two different ways to look at the singles market. First, there's slabbed coins, which that's a whole nother video. I'm not even going to bother with that because that's pretty much dictated by money. That's simple. The singles market, when it comes to raw coins, however, is different, and especially with Lincoln Cents, because what we're seeing are people like this. These have become hugely prevalent. When I search on eBay for BU wheat rolls, this is what pops up. People selling singles out of rolls. They're selling one coin for $4 or wanting you to bid, starting bid $4 for a coin. And apologize for the bird, but he wants in on this too. He's upset about it just the same as I am, because look, some of the rolls that they're selling, if you calculate the price of some of these rolls that they're buying these coins for, and then turning around and selling these coins, they're making a ton of money on this stuff. And by the time they sell out and sell through all of the coins, maybe they don't sell them all, who knows, but well, you add up $4 or $5 per coin times, yeah, I mean, maybe more, who knows, maybe somebody buys some of these coins at 10 and 12 and $15 by the time they're all sold. So the singles market is a strange one. I'm going to slide over here now and you get more to the middle. The other part of the uncirculated portion of things is when it comes to single coins is people that want a specific type of coin, like whether it be toned coins or whether they're they've got colors to them or stuff like that. Those are specialty coins, and those will always command what someone is willing to pay for them. That's simple. But here's the other interesting part about that portion of what someone is willing to pay. I got into an argument not that long ago with someone who wanted to post something on my Facebook page about some circulated Lincoln Cents, common date, 40s and 50s. And they wanted to post them for a stupid amount of money that just wasn't mathing for me. And so I declined the post. And, the more that I thought about it, do I think I'm right? Do I think I'm wrong? No, I don't necessarily think so, because I think somebody has to kind of stand up for the buyer here. And so that they don't get steamrolled. If they want to sell that kind of stuff someplace else and charge 4 times what it's actually should be selling for, go someplace else and do it, just not on my page. But the thing here is I've had a couple of other people contact me. One guy contacted me just via Messenger in the last couple of days. He says, hey, I went to a couple of local coin stores and they want 22 cents for common date 40s and 50s. is what they're selling them to me for. And I'm like, wait, 22 cents for something that just last year was selling for 3 and 4 cents, maybe 5 cents tops, kind of thing. Something's not right there. So more I kind of poked at it, I basically said, okay, here's the thing though. What are those dealers paying for those coins? In other words, are they that scarce that they're selling them for 22 cents and they're buying them for 15 cents or 12 cents or whatever? Who knows? Because look, when they were selling for 3 and 5 cents a piece, the dealers were buying them for 2 and 3 cents a piece. So they're making a little bit of money on them. Are they paying more for them is the question. So he called up the dealership, and of course the dealership wouldn't give him a straight answer as to what they're paying for them, and he'd have to check, and so on and so forth. So look, somebody's attempting to drive the market here. And my caution to you in this particular situation is, don't believe everything you hear when it comes out of a dealer's mouth. It's not that I'm picking on dealers, because I have a lot of friends who are dealers, and and that's fine. But there are some dealers that don't know the market the same way, and they're good at what they do at certain things, but there are other things they're just out to make money on. And I understand that. Be cautious with what it is. Don't believe gospel out of everything you hear, especially if you're going to a coin show. You can go from one booth to the other, and and get a general feel for what's going on. If all the dealers in the room are saying, yeah, bulk 40s and 50s circulated wheat cents are selling for 20 cents a piece or more, okay, maybe somebody's onto something. But then ask them how much they're paying for them. And if you have a whole bunch of them like I do sitting in the basement in a huge tote, I think I probably have 60 or 70,000 of them down there. I got some money sitting down there. That's the way I look at it, because I paid 2.5 cents a piece for most of the ones I've got in the basement. I'm doing money. So don't believe it. And whatever you do, don't buy into it, because if you buy a whole bunch of Lincoln cents, circulated Lincoln cents at 20 some cents a piece, and then find out that you go through them and get what you want, and you want to sell them again, you may not be able to get 20 cents a piece back out of them again. And so you're going to lose money. So look, be careful with that. From a singles market, be careful also. I have heard rumors of people going to shows that are saying that certain supplies for better quality stuff is drying up, and I do believe that is the case. And the reason why I believe that's the case is, look, just like anybody else, you put an end to production on something, which is what we started this whole video about, and people are going to want it. People that don't necessarily collect on a regular basis are going to want these coins, and they're going to want to put together a set of them, and they're going to be willing to pay $10 a piece for something that just last year was selling for $1. So yeah, there's a law of supply and demand here, which takes me back to the middle part of this video with, if there's a law of supply and demand, what the heck is going on with BU rolls of stuff? And I guess I haven't really looked at the dime rolls or nickel rolls or anything like that to see whether or not the same thing's happening with those. I should do that, and I will. But pay attention to what you're doing. That's the best advice I can give you. Hopefully you've learned something from this video. If you have, please do me a favor. I don't ask it much, but hit the subscribe button if you want more information. I'm going to try and make a better effort of putting up some more videos on a regular basis. And do me a favor and hit the like button. It helps. I don't get any money, by the way. I don't have enough subscribers, and I don't get enough hourly views to make any money off this. So I'm doing it just because I really want to educate you guys. It's that simple. And hopefully you guys are more educated now than you were at the beginning of the video. If you are, I've done my job. You guys have a really nice Mother's Day. And if you're like me, and your mom's not around anymore, and you'll miss her a little bit, do yourself a favor and just think kind words. Take it easy. Have a good evening, guys.